Hello, I'm Jonathan, and I'd like to talk to you about testing and assessment. How many of us enjoy being monitored, tested, and assessed? Not many, I suspect. And if we ask for our students' opinion, I think we can guess the answer. But like it or not, this is the main way that students are judged throughout their academic career. And these days, there is a whole world of information that teachers can get from tests and assessments, making it much easier to continually monitor the progress of every student. This, in turn, makes it much easier to set personal, achievable goals for them. I'd like to take a closer look at monitoring progress and setting goals by asking three basic questions: why, what, and how. Let's start with why. Why do teachers spend so much time and effort setting assessments, marking tests, and giving students feedback on their progress? Well, one of the reasons is that studying and testing is more effective than studying alone. There was an interesting experiment which proved this some years ago. Two groups of students were given some science literature to read. The first group spent 2 sessions just studying the material, while the second group only spent 1 session studying, but followed that up in the second session with a test. Which group did better? Yes, it was the second group. The first group began to forget the material very quickly, while the second group still had good recall even a week later. Why is this? Well, the process of trying to recall information, which is what we do in a test, actually helps us to learn and remember. We forget, we try to remember, we recall. Bit by bit, this process builds our long-term memory and helps us to learn better. And successful learning is always motivating. But tests are not the only kind of assessment. Nowadays, teachers can also see how students are doing between tests. They can find out which grammar points students are struggling with, which vocabulary they don't yet know, and which skills they're weakest at. This information is really useful for lesson planning, but it's also valuable for setting goals. When students set their own goals, they start to take responsibility for their own learning. But what sort of information will allow students to set their own goals? And what sort of goals should they be? Let's move on to the what question. In general, the more specific the information, the more specific the goals can be. If we know that a student is good at speaking, but weak in writing, we can set goals that focus on building writing skills. But how do we find out such detailed information? Preparing regular tests for every area of learning is a chore. Fortunately, these days, there's no need to do it yourself, as the testing package that comes with a modern course will do the work for you. In that package, you'll probably want tests for the beginning of the course, for the end of the course, and for every unit in the book. And those tests need to focus not just on grammar and vocabulary, but also on functional language, as well as receptive skills and productive skills. The simplest kinds of goals that you can get from progress assessments involve improving your score or grade over a period of time. For example, a student who is strong at grammar but weak at listening might set a goal to improve by 1 grade in the next speaking test. Specific goals like this allow the teacher to suggest ways of achieving those goals. For example, specific websites with listening material or specific exercises from the workbook. But test scores are just one indicator of student progress, and they can be supplemented with very detailed information on how students are doing in their homework, their assignments, and even their workbook practice activities. Teachers can now find out, for example, how individual students are doing on a particular unit, a particular lesson, and even a particular activity. They can also see students' performance in each skill. This is a useful cross-reference for test results and can highlight students who are underperforming in tests and might need some extra help with exam technique. All of this allows teachers and students to set much more accurate and achievable goals. And achievable is an important aspect of goal setting. Michael Jordan, the famous basketball player, explained how he motivated himself to improve with a constant series of small goals. If you're getting a C, he said, first aim for a B before you aim for an A. That way you'll achieve more and stay motivated. Let's look finally then at the how, and in particular the how of setting goals. I've mentioned the importance of achievable goals, but it's also important that the goals are, in some way, measurable. The Common Error Report tells teachers which errors a class as a whole is making and which ones an individual student is making. With this knowledge, teachers can tell students exactly how they need to improve and give them a specific target. For example, no more than 2 mistakes with prepositions in the next homework assignment. Or, learn the prepositions that go with these common adjectives. Specific goals like this are probably best suited to short time periods of a week or 2, while more general goals, such as improving test scores, can be spread across a term. General goals, supplemented by specific targets, are often the most effective. And to maintain motivation, it's important that the students receive feedback on their performance and encouragement to keep going, whether they achieve their goal or not. In summary then, as the saying goes, nothing breeds success like success. But to identify what success is in the first place, we need appropriate and specific goals, as well as a range of ways to monitor and benchmark progress. Finding the right recipe to motivate and encourage each student is not always easy, but with the right materials to hand, it's certainly a lot easier than it used to be. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to hear some tips on using technology to motivate students, watch out for my next talk. Goodbye.